game design. And my model for this is this game that there's a screenshot of right now. This may not look like a game, but it is. It's called The Marriage by Rod Humble, and some of you probably have played this. If you haven't, I've talked about a bunch of games during this talk, but if you come away from this talk and decide to download and play one game, let it be this one here. This game, if you care about the future of games as art, this game is very, very important. It's a significant milestone in the development of what it means to express through a game. It's also very simple and a small download, and I can actually probably give you a copy because I have it on my laptop. So those are most of my whys. I have a last one, which I don't know what it is exactly. All the things that I talked about a minute ago, all those reasons about like ethics and exploring truth and things like that, are really only things that I came to understand in the past couple of years. I was compelled to make games before that, right? And now that I understand those things, I have this personal tendency that when I understand things, I tend to trivialize them. Like, oh, since I understand that pretty well, it can't be that important. I need to chase after this other thing that's like deeper and more important. Well, there's a part of me that doesn't want to be understood and doesn't want to be measured, right? Because if you can understand it or measure it, there's a limit to its depth, and it can't possibly be that important, right? And this is really the source of a lot of my game design. I think that I talked at the beginning about how Flow and Everyday Shooter had a philosophy. I think Braid has a philosophy. And it's this weird, uncannibal thing here that I don't even understand, but that I tried as hard as I could to put into that game. So I'm going to sum up here. Me, and I think many people will back me up on this, being an indie game artist, especially trying to be a notable one, means traveling a hard road, right? And I'll leave you with a challenge. And the core idea of the challenge is to maybe be a little bit more than independent game developers usually try to be. And I picked some random pieces out of what I was talking about earlier. I could challenge you to be innovative or ethical or personal, but maybe those aren't things that you want to be, right? But maybe you have some ideas about other values that are more important to you or deeper to you than these. And if you don't want to be challenged to do these, then I challenge you to find that value of yours that is much more important than anything I've talked about and put that into a game and convince me that I want to be challenged by your value, right? Because when we start that kind of exchange, that's when our medium is really going to take off as something that's deep and meaningful to people. So the reason it's so hard, right? It's way easier to be derivative than it is to be innovative, right? We all know that. It's way easier to be unethical than it is to be ethical. It's tremendously easier to be impersonal or distant, cynical, or uncaring. Most games are cynical or uncaring in some way or another, especially mainstream games. It's way easier to do that than it is to be personal or vulnerable, right? But it's the indie's role to do these things because that's how we differentiate ourselves from the mainstream industry, right? A big company, especially a publicly held company, literally cannot make a game that is personal or authentic. In fact, in the United States, it is against the law, and it probably is in Australia too, because Australia has a lot of similar laws. I'll go into that in QA if anybody cares. It's kind of funny. So I claim that your future audience is thirsty for this kind of extra connection, authenticity, deep motivation, right? They're thirsty for games to be driven by this why, by these philosophies, and not necessarily by the how, or by, hey, this is a really fun game where you shoot stuff and there's cool music, right? In a market full of uninspired games, especially mainstream games that you can't compete with on production value, this is, in a very pragmatic sense, how you get noticed and how you get published and how you make money. So that's all I have to say apart from questions. These are some links that you can look at. The top one, you can download the prototypes that I put up earlier. And the bottom one is a news blog where I cover items about other artful and experimental games. So thanks for your attention, and I'll take questions for the remaining maybe 10 minutes.
Which is good because you can take questions. We probably don't need the mic because it's a small auditorium. So who has a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask about whole personal games being illegal in the States and in Australia possibly too.
Yeah, okay, so the thing about things being illegal, in America, a publicly held corporation is bound by law that it must do everything in its power to increase shareholder value, right? Because there's been so many like scams and scandals financially. So if you are somehow a steward of a publicly held company and you don't do everything that you can to increase shareholder value, you can be sued, right? Or deposed and all sorts of things like that. So it's a matter of preservation for a publicly held company to do all kinds of due diligence, right? And make sure that this product that we're developing is going to make as much money as it can. And what that means is you can't trust the design of this product to somebody who has some personal ideas about what he would want to communicate to some people, right? Because it's probably going to go out there and flop, and then your shareholders get complain, and you could get sued, right? So it's not. I don't think it's a law that necessarily comes into play too often, but I think it's funny. Like it is technically illegal in America to make authentic games via a publicly held company. Yeah. There.
I wanted to ask about your assessment of your prototypes.
Sure.
What people find educational or entertaining is often surprising. When you're saying the prototype you feel like when you show it to a few of your friends who are probably within the same subculture, how do you break out of the blinkers of our own game history, I suppose?
Yeah, so in case you can't hear in the back, the question is, how do you really know, I'm trying to summarize, like how do you know that what you judge was fun or unfun about a prototype is going to be the same that like the wider audience might find? And, that's just part of your thing. Like, I feel that I'm not necessarily explicitly designing games for an audience, right? I'm designing games to express the things that I want to express and that embody the things that I care about. And I would really love it if they appeal to a wide audience, because it means I can sell some copies and make enough money to like make the next game, right? But if they don't, and the game was important enough to me, that's okay. So in my personal case, I don't necessarily worry about that so much. I just look at my own situation and say, am I really convinced, with feedback from my friends who are it's kind of an incestuous circle of like all these game designers who have like certain highfalutin notions about what games should be, right? So it's not exactly a representative sample, but I just look at that feedback and I say, is this doing what I wanted it to do, right? And usually it didn't, because if you have ambitious goals, usually you're going to fail to some degree or another. And so if you're talking about making a product, that's not what I'm about. It's not what I was really talking about today. So it's a different mode.
Yeah, not necessarily that point, just not making games for other game designers and make something.
Yeah, well,
something for a lot of people.
For me, if a work is going to embody some of the deep feelings that I was talking about, I have to feel them, right? As long as I feel them, that's okay. Like that's enough, because I know some percentage of people out there will also. They will respond to that, even if it's a small percentage. It's still like a valid work, right? If I don't feel them, maybe somebody else might feel them and respond to it in the way that I wanted, but it's not going to feel good to me, right? Because it's going to feel kind of fake, like it didn't really work. But other people might have their own opinion about that, right? I don't know. Yeah. Actually, he was first from before, so. Yeah.
I noticed on your earlier prototype of Braid, you had a do not distribute notice. And I noticed these ones up here that you're distributing ones you've abandoned. I've noticed a current trend that some developers are actually putting their prototype out there. Like I've been playing a game called Golf Question Mark, which is quite a popular prototype.
By Cryptic Seed, right?
Yeah, we've been playing it at Lands as well. I was just wondering what are your thoughts on actually putting, viable game development prototypes online and distributing them?
I sort of take that as a case-by-case basis. I didn't distribute the original Braid prototype for two reasons. One is because I really did want to develop it into a game and not endanger that by like having people take it and make their own thing. But I wasn't being too secretive, because I then went to all these conferences and talked about it. Like I was presenting it publicly in 2005, so I obviously wasn't that worried about it. But the other thing about it was I cared a lot about what I was finding in that game. And the outer part of it, like all that lack of production values and crappy controls and stuff, was really getting in the way, right? So I didn't feel, I think the real reason is I didn't feel like that was a good representation of what I wanted the game to be, so I didn't want it to be out there, right? It's also the reason I haven't put out a demo of the current version of Braid. It looks a lot better. A lot of people want a demo, and I'm like, hey, it's not ready yet. It's not quite, it's almost there, but it's not quite there. So yeah, the Cryptic Sea guys, I haven't talked to them in a while. They actually live an hour away from me. yeah, they probably just felt that they wanted people to play their game and have fun.